and aging clients, all of whom have increasingly different languages. In California, this has led people to create a Cultural and Linguistic Competency of Physicians Act of 2003 passed last October. And here are just some segments from it, and you can find it on the web pretty easily. This is what is required if you're going to be a culturally and linguistically competent physician. It is it's voluntary, and you also have that on your handout. What about cultural competence? Because that's what I'm moving into. Cultural competence, according to the National Center at Georgetown, requires that organizations have a defined set of values and principles, value diversity, conduct self-assessment, incorporate the above in all aspects of policy making, but it's my contention that we have not gone far enough. These are areas of importance, but they're usually designated for patient education. Understanding speech patterns and styles, subject matter and vocabulary, negotiation of pragmatic and sociolinguistic features of interactions, ability to understand systems and procedures. But shouldn't the medical provider and the rest of the family learn about this also? That would be my contention. Cultural competence cannot be one way, focused exclusively on any one group. It is problematic, for example, to take materials developed for populations of European descent and introduce them to other cultural groups. The advances in the articulation of multicultural practice and policy have focused on developing competency skills rather than on altering institutional structures. And the last clip is one of my favorites, just because you think you saw that the word was different doesn't eclipse the fact that you may have missed the whole point of what got said. There are two current approaches in the cultural competency movement for healthcare and for healthcare providers. One is patient-based, the other is person-centered. The patient-based cross-cultural curriculum is linguistically based in that it combines medical interviewing with sociocultural and ethnographic tools of medical anthropology. In person-centered care, the nature of the demanding process which an elderly individual experiences is contingent upon the nature of the social interactions which he or she has with other people. In other words, not only does your conversational context over time determine the extent to which you are or are not called demented, it also colors whether or not you receive services and the extent to which you can be kept on a specific plateau. There are current works, there are current needs. Our friends in communication disorders are doing some cross-cultural work. It is almost exclusively on accent, but it's really good. Both research and training in healthcare communications need expansion in order to include a range of dialectal and stylistic features. Learning to recognize discourse components and features such as culturally preferred ways of telling a story. That's part of cultural competence also. Patients, families, residents, caregivers, staff, and institutions all need cultural and linguistic curricula. According to Harvard's poll, 91% of Hispanics say language is a barrier to equal care, and 8 in 10 blacks believe that bias is the major reason for disparate care. On the other column, nursing home aides, 75% of nursing home aides experience constant racism, so much in fact that they're able to divide it into two kinds, that you meant and that was inadvertent. We need to expand our current work with culture and dialect awareness curricula to medical education. Linguists use the term dialect to denote patterns. We need to use the whole pattern. Since nothing, and I quote this from Walt, he's got a lot more fancy places elsewhere, but I love this sentence, since nothing is more central to education and human behavior than language, dialect awareness programs should not be tangential adjunct to core knowledge. What CEP tells us about discourse styles of older black men is that repetition is used for signifying on himself and style and expecting his interlocutor to understand that he enacts and reconstitutes culture by the way he presents himself. He double voices. His two-track stories ask his interlocutor to affiliate with shared cultural identity. He is a man who has suffered deeply and who has survived. He plays among the features he selects to showcase his metaphorical and his real, though masked, identity. E.W., though nearly completely demented, can still exemplify certain features. He can no longer be loquacious, but he can use the stylistic device of incremental phrasal repetition to signal cultural features of identity, invite involvement, and to suggest that he still can evaluate his own narrative. Glory and E.W. alike can help us understand these things about language and healthcare across the South. Understanding dialect, discourse, and language varieties is a crucial part of helping people live better, whether you're giving or receiving care. Elderly people with dementia don't stop being people. New understandings of language can alter diagnoses, improve health and cognition, by changing communicative context and ground the delivery of services. Low-paid caregivers can benefit from new information of training, improve quality of their job, begin to seek advocates for career ladders. The examples in the discussion I've just given are taken from the longitudinal Alzheimer's corpus subset of the Charlotte Conversation and Narrative Collection. They will join the other items on the web now going up. Our interdisciplinary research team's collection of studies key to this corpus is forthcoming. Pause. Thank you.
Quite amazing, Dena. Thank you very much. She did not use up her time. Of course, she didn't have the technical difficulties. Questions, please. A fascinating set of papers. Linguistics in legal use. It's just something I had never thought of. Question? Is your hand up? Okay, I'm coming.
I can probably do it better. It's slightly tangential, but related to Alzheimer's, and this is maybe what the book is going to answer. I know there's tests such as smell tests and others, which are supposedly preliminary tests for indicating who may or may not have Alzheimer's. Is there a possibility, or have you already developed, linguistic tests which might help in the same way?
Well, Romula Bucks, bless you, girl. Romula Bucks and a crowd in Great Britain. Romula Bucks and a group of others have identified a set of statistical measures which, when applied to transcribed text, can distinguish early Alzheimer's from normal aging. And one of the studies in the book is looking at a set of statistical measures of lexical diversity. Our book is not a narrative, it's a collection of research-based articles, and a lot of the extended family here today is helping put it in. I think we are a little ways away from beginning to be able to take language and do just by ear the kind of profiling that you're talking about, and I'd be a little nervous about it. But what I am really interested in long term is not only creating culturally competent training for low-paid caregivers so that they may advance up a career ladder and not bear the brunt of all the blame for services that did or didn't get taken care of, but I'm also highly interested in being able to develop yardsticks by which we can monitor progression. That's what some of the studies are on, in order to develop instruments that bring services in. In the most recent Topics in Communication Disorders, most of the people looking at Alzheimer's who have been looking at it from a clinical point of view are saying things like, my gosh, you can make changes. They can learn. The starts of work done by Heidi Hamilton and Wyman Nathan and Steve Sabat in the mid-90s has been crucial in exposing this. When I first sent out an article and a paper on Alzheimer's, everybody said, isn't that a strange way to talk about aphasia? Which, of course, you can be an Alzheimer's and have aphasia. Just because you have one dreadful thing doesn't mean you can't have all the others. There's no quota of all the horrible things that can happen to people.
Dena, is it a truism amongst all Alzheimer's treaters that language is amongst the last of the components that leave the consciousness, that it's deeply embedded?
Actually, I think an emotional response will be the last to go. That emotional response is, however, as far as we can tell, key to prosodic cues. One of the things that's fascinating, I'm very interested in truncated language, whether it be in legal or health spheres. Bits of language go, but enormous amounts, particularly formulaic, are retained. And what we have with someone like E.W. is someone who is using the last bits of formula to construct a story and to continue a conversation under the most adverse possible circumstances.
But would it be worthwhile then to study the language patterns of perhaps hundreds of Alzheimer's patients so that you could tell at what stage they were?
Would you believe that's what I'm trying to do? And if you have a hospital that you can get me 50 more, I'll take it. Thank you.
Other questions? Absolutely marvelous panel.
I can't turn it off, John. I'm afraid to.
Language in the service of the law may not be the most important thing to you guys, but it sure is important to me. And I've really been fascinated by this. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Captain.